mind, that is this mind, we'll be able to understand everybody else's mind, because it is that simple. We make it complicated because all untrained minds work the same way. And all trained minds also work the same way. But look, here is the paradox. There is nothing like a trained mind. I always say it's always a mind in training. So we're all at different degrees of training our mind. And even the degrees changes within ourselves, depending on the case, depending on the time, depending on our moods and whatnot. So today we're going to go about learning about one of the most important concepts, neuroscience concepts, that is so very important, not only to understand ourselves, to understand others, and to understand this world itself. And hopefully, everybody's view about the world and about the people, your own colleagues, your own loved ones, your own spouses, your own children, your own siblings, your own parents, hopefully it will change after we go through this most important neuroscience concept. And I'm just going to skip. You have heard from Ramesh enough number of times about the qualities of a leader, about a flexible leader. And from now on, you can start thinking about not just flexible leader, a conscious leader, or maybe mindful leader. And what is it that prevents us sometimes not to be a mindful leader, not to be a conscious leader? This is what I'm hoping will happen after today's session. So we've gone through all of this earlier. We will go through it again and again. But today I would like to only stress upon this slide from all the previous slides. This is the way we have learned about the anatomy of the brain. I have diluted, I shouldn't say diluted, maybe made it so simplistic way of classifying the brain. Not from an anatomical perspective as to right brain and left brain, but from an evolutionary perspective. So we have divided the brain into lower center and higher center. This higher center is truly what makes us human, because this higher center is the most recently evolved and recently developed, which is still several millions of years, but still this higher center is what has developed the most in humans. So whenever I use the word center, it pertains to something that is tangible, like the brain, that we can actually, some of us, like as neuroscientists or neurosurgeons, we can touch the brain, we can feel, we can do certain recordings and whatnot. So this is something that is tangible. Whereas whenever I use the word mind, we know it is something that is intangible. The willful mind, as you have learned earlier, other names for willful mind is conscious mind, also rational mind, actually comes out of this higher center, which makes us truly human, as opposed to the lower center. This lower center of the brain is so old when compared to the higher center. And this is what we share with not just our four-legged cousins with a tail, but even as far back as even some of the reptiles even. So much so, one tiny part of this brain, lower center of the brain, is also called as a reptilian brain, because it acts exactly the way it would act in reptiles, even in humans. So this lower center, even though we share it with many other animals, it's also very equally important. We will see that later. From this lower center comes our habitual mind. Other names for this habitual mind is the emotional mind. Also, I would like to call this as non-conscious mind, whereas usually in books, you come across the term as subconscious mind. But lately, more and more of neuroscientists prefer to use this term non-conscious rather than just subconscious mind. And I would like to use or introduce two new terms for these two parts of the brain. And not for the brain, actually, for the mind. And that we are all familiar, irrespective of what our mother tongue is. I'm going to introduce two new terms in Sanskrit. And I know it is very similar in my mother tongue, which is Kannada. And I also know that it is very similar in Hindi and probably most other Indian languages. These two terms are the same. So whenever we use that word willful mind, conscious mind, rational mind, we refer to that as buddhi. Whereas the habitual mind, emotional mind, or the non-conscious mind is referred to as manas. This is how it is referred even in our scriptures. It may be Upanishads or it could be Bhagavad Gita. So this, all as Indians, we are very familiar with this analogy of our body, comparing our body to a chariot. This is what it says in Bhagavad Gita, right? If our body is compared to the chariot, we, the buddhi, is the charioteer. Whereas the 5 horses, or as many horses as you might have, are nothing but our sense organs or the manas. This is where you will see, I would like to make this analogy because this is what us as Indians, I'm not talking about Hindus, Muslims, Christians, none of that, but as Indians, we have heard this analogy so many times. I would like to bring a scientific perspective to this. We always have to depend on the charioteer, not on the horses. We will see as we go along today. Many times we depend on the horses for the chariot to move. But it has to be the chariot has to be under the control of the charioteer, which means it is the buddhi that has to be active. And this buddhi is truly what makes us human. We will understand this more about this buddhi or the willful mind, the conscious mind, or the rational mind. What are the functions of that as we go along? I'll touch upon this. So just I would like to introduce these two terms in this slide, which you have already learned. And then we will move along to present topic. Yes, you have all answered the questionnaire, and Rakal has the average scores also. I would like to go through this, or rather, let us go through this together at the end of the didactic. It will make more sense, and how we can relate after having answered this questionnaire to today's didactic, it will make more sense. But I would like to show you how the flow of this didactic is going to be today. As I said earlier, we're going to learn about the most important neuroscience concept, which is about the negativity bias. Bias, or another name for it, is partiality towards negativity. And this negativity bias has some biological evolutionary biological significance, because there is a purpose for it. Very important to have this bias actually, because there is a purpose behind it. So it is needed. It is very much needed, this bias that we have. However, even though it is needed, we need to know how to overcome it. This is the paradox. It doesn't make sense. If it is needed, why do we need to overcome, right? We need to overcome if and only if we want to be happier than where we are, if we want to be evolving into better human beings, we definitely need to understand this negativity bias and be able to overcome. However, this bias is so very much needed for our existence, for our survival, wherein when we especially need to compete with each other in this dog-eat-dog world, this bias, negativity bias is needed. But most of us, we are in a position, we are trying to see how we can come out of this highly competitive world, this dog-eat-dog world. But yet, competition is important, I know. But to be able to educate our children at our educational institutions and our own children at home and everybody else to be able to learn to compete with ourselves, not with others. When we compete with others, this negativity bias is at the highest level. But we cannot get rid of the competition. Otherwise, we're going to be so complacent. We will never try to improve. This is another drawback. So we need to make that paradigm shift and to be able to learn first to compete with ourselves so that we can be role models to other colleagues of others and to other students and to rest of the people by following what we actually implement in our lives. So even though this is very much needed for our very survival, we're going to learn to know how to overcome it. Not only learn to know how to overcome this, there are plenty of tools available even on the internet. However, we're going to mention all of that. However, I'm going to show you how to overcome in a jiffy. That is what is needed, because we're talking about the thoughts, the negative thoughts, the automatic negative thoughts. Thoughts come and go like that. So we need to learn how to overcome it just like that in a jiffy. That we're going to learn today, how to overcome these automatic negative thoughts in a jiffy. So before I go further, I'm going to request Lalita Kandaswamy to read out a case scenario. By the way, this is not the case. I think, Rakal, is it who is presenting the case later after the didactic?
Anita Saxena.
Okay, Anita. She will be presenting the case later, but I'm going to request Lalita to read out a scenario, and I will tell you why later. May I request Lalita to read out?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Usha. Okay, to start, you can hear me, isn't it?
Yes, very well.
Yeah, I can't see myself. That doesn't matter, I think. So, this is just a case about Asha, who has been recently promoted as the principal of a school. She has been capable, responsible, and effective with about 7 years experience and at senior secondary level. But at the end of a long day, While she's on the way home, she just declares to herself, this job is too demanding. I'll never be able to succeed in this role. Her management has just asked her to do something really worthwhile to improve the image of the school. I'll never be able to get full cooperation from all the staff. Never, ever. She muses. They are all so much engrossed in their own petty problems. Why can't they look beyond themselves? All they need is to think of the roles they are playing in building up the children for their future and to see the larger perspective. Why don't they look how to build up a good reputation for the school? As she arrives home, she sees her little one running to her mum, who is always late from school. And to the child, she snaps, the 10-year-old, Renu, why is the house in such a mess? Why is the TV on? Isn't it homework time? Did you tell auntie to make 5 extra chapatis tonight? Or have you forgotten? Should the principal be trying to understand the younger teacher's problems or vice versa? Is it correct for her to expect young teachers to see and work with a larger perspective in view about the school and the community and how it should make a name for itself? Will not the younger teachers be looking first to establish themselves within their own classes, within their job description, to secure a strong foothold with their colleagues, students, and parents? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lalita. I can see, except maybe for few younger people here, this is not just the story of Asha, it's each and everyone's story. I can truly see how we can all relate to that. And Lalita has put in so many years of her experience trying to balance and harmonize both her personal life and career life. She has come up with such a scenario. It's not just Asha's, it's each and every one of us. The reason we read out this scenario, it's like a thought experiment. I want you to all, as you go through the didactic, keep relating to Asha. And even more importantly, as we go through, keep relating to certain thoughts and thought patterns that go within you as we go along, because we're going to learn how to identify some of these negative thoughts. We're going to label them. So I would like you to do two things. As I said, keep this scenario in the back of your mind, and also start relating to some of the certain thought patterns that you usually have, especially at the end of a stressful day. So this is the reason for us to present the scenario. And also, hopefully from today, you're also going to see the challenges and the problems, and not just challenges and problems in your lives, but all your experiences, either to learn, whether it is positive learning or negative learning, it doesn't matter. Anything that we learn, let us make a shift from just talking from our experience to bring in a neuroscience perspective to all of this. So I'm going to try and see how we can use the scenario and also the case that Anita is going to bring about later, and try and see everything from a neuroscience perspective, fitting different neuroscience concepts and whatnot. So then we will see none of these problems are our personal problems. Everybody will go through, irrespective of what type of work that they do, how many years of experience one might have. These are all such common stuff. And then we will come out of it personalizing it rather than looking from a scientific perspective, and to be able to find solution for this. And not only that, last but not the least, we're going to see, even though we know all of this, why is it so hard to overcome this negativity bias that we have? In fact, either after the didactic or from next week, and especially next week and from next week onwards, I would like to hear, and not just me, the whole team Yogakshema would like to hear the challenges of you to overcome such negativity bias or to overcome such negativity thought patterns. And when we share our own experiences of learning to overcome after we give the tools, you will see. And that by sharing, we will also see how tough it is, but yet it can be as simple as possible, because we're going to give you a tool wherein we can truly overcome these negative thought patterns in a jiffy like that. With that, let us move on. Whether we know it or not, irrespective of one is a principal or a student, a professor or a student, a scientist or a clerk, a doctor or a patient. In other words, what I'm trying to get at is, without any exception, each and every one of us has this negativity bias within us. As I told you earlier, it has that evolutionary purpose. We won't go into great detail into that, because I can be talking about this for about a couple of days, which I have done earlier in a workshop, but I'm trying to condense all of that in the next 20 minutes. So irrespective of who we are, each and every one of us has this negativity bias. And what is that? That any negative thought, any negative feeling, any negative emotion, any negative belief system, any negative perception, any negative memory, any negative experience sticks to our brain or mind like Velcro. Whereas the same positive, any positive thought, positive emotion, positive feeling, positive memory, positive experience, positive perception, positive memory and belief system gets slide off just like Teflon. We know what Teflon is. Teflon is that non-stick material that is used in a non-stick pan that we use in the kitchen, wherein even kids can make perfect dosas and they can flip easily because of that non-stick material. So anything that is not positive, be it a thought, feeling, emotion, memory, experience, perception, or a belief system, it gets washed off just like as a Teflon material. And this is what causes frustration, both in us and in others, because we are really fast to see that such kind of negative thoughts and feelings and memories in us, and much more than us in others for that matter. And it becomes so frustrated, but we don't know what to do with that. So because it is so important, let us dive in a little bit deeper into these things, and then we will be able to understand why we have kept one separate session just for this, so that we will be able to identify it, acknowledge it, so that we will be able to overcome. These negative thoughts, they are involuntary. In other words, they are automatic. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to put even a little bit of effort to get these negative thoughts. Whereas even for one single positive thought, we need to put in so much effort. Whereas these negative thoughts and negative thought patterns happen automatically, spontaneously, and involuntarily. And scientists say there are anywhere from 70,000 to 90,000 thoughts in a day. And most of them, 85% of those, whatever number of thousands of thoughts that we get, 85% of those thoughts are negative. You go figure it out. It doesn't surprise me because they're involuntary, they're spontaneous, they're automatic. And it doesn't cause us any effort. And it is so efficient. If it is automatic, it is very efficient. And that's why 85% of the thoughts that we get are negative. And if we are not aware of those, and if we go, let these ants, from now on, I'm going to refer these automatic negative thoughts as ants. If we let them go unchecked and unnoticed, they breed into colonies of ants. And not only they breed into many more ants, colonies of ants, these thoughts turn into feelings, because thought is a precursor to a feeling, whether we know it or not. And these negative thoughts become negative feelings. And feelings actually stay at the level of the body, and they stay for much longer time. Thoughts come and go, they're fleeting. That's why it is compared to a monkey. Thoughts are compared to a monkey in our scriptures, Markata, monkey. However, feelings stay in the body and stay for much longer times. When I say feelings stay in our body, they get manifested, if they are negative feelings, as aches and pains. If they are happy feelings, that little butterfly is in our heart, not in our stomach. The butterflies in the stomach is again a negative feeling. But those little flutter of the heart when we see somebody, a loved one, how we feel, that is expressed at the level of the body. And not only that, our thoughts and feelings shape our personality. And negative thoughts, they get into, when they go into unnoticed and unchecked, they become negative thought patterns. And these negative thought patterns, they become our attitude. Attitude, in a scientific way, has a different connotation than the word attitude we use in regular English language. The neuroscience behind attitude is similar thoughts, group of similar thoughts. When they come again and again, make up an attitude. And those attitudes later on turn into habits. And that is what makes us our personality, which makes our character. And personality would go together. Just like you see a couple of pictures here, in nature, we see red ants, we see black ants, we see really tiny, tiny black ants. Some of them, red ants, are fire ants. Some of the red ants are even termites, just like how we see in nature. And in nature, hardly ever we see a stray ant. Whenever we notice ants, they come one after another, one behind the other, or they come in groups when we go out in a picnic. You sit on the lawn and they come in groups. In a similar manner, our negative thought patterns, you can hardly get a stray negative thought. Most of these negative thoughts come one after another after another. That is why they go unnoticed and unchecked. And by the time we start noticing it, we get so many of them. And it becomes, if they go unnoticed and unchecked for weeks and months, they turn into certain negative personalities too. So where do these ants come from? When we look at from the perspective of the brain itself and the type of mind, we see the ants come from the lower center of the brain, or from the habitual mind, or from the emotional mind. And mind you, whenever we say we get stressed out, stress is another cause of having more of these automatic negative thoughts or ants. And even when we get stressed out, it is the lower center of the brain that gets activated more. I'm not going to deal with stress this time. Ramesh is going to be dealing with that much later in some other session. But I want you to just be aware of this, both whenever we say we are stressed out and whenever we notice many of the negative thoughts either within us or within or with somebody else, then we should know right away, oh, it is my lower center that is getting activated. This is what I mean by we have to make a shift in the way we are looking at life and the world perspective, everything from this scientific perspective, rather than saying, oh, they are so angry all the time or so jealous and whatnot. All of this come under automatic negative thoughts. We need to say, oh, it's the lower center of the brain that is becoming so active. I need to be aware and switch from the lower center to the higher center. In terms of the mind, now my manas is very active. My emotional mind, my habitual mind is very active. Now I need to switch to the level of buddhi, to the level of conscious mind, to the level of willful mind and whatnot. So as long as we get to that, I think it is wonderful. And also, I mentioned we're going to get into just mentioning the powers of the conscious mind or the willful mind. Some of the names of the functions or the powers, either you can call it function or power of this willful or conscious mind, is the discriminative intelligence. It's our willpower. It's our self-awareness. All of these are the functions of our conscious mind. These are our powers. I purposely used it as a power, even though it sounds esoteric, but these are our true hidden powers. We need to be exercising these functions of our conscious mind, which is nothing but the unlimited power that we have within us. So let us understand some of the types of these ants. I will go over quickly. I was just looking at the time, as I said earlier to Aditi, and I think I've lost track of my time already. Let us quickly move on and then see. Let us label some of these automatic negative thoughts, what they are. And then I'll quickly go into it, and then we can go into some of these ants, types of ants, even during our Q&A session. One of the types of ant is filtering. Let's suppose we have so many of the memories, but what stick? Something that hurts us. The memory of any experience, that is what we call that as filtering ants. And overgeneralization, this is another type of ant. Overgeneralization, or there are other names also for it, all or nothing. I never ever do this, or I always get into problem. That all or nothing thinking, or in other words, black and white thinking. This is where we say, nobody understands me. This is what Asha was saying in that scenario. Why can't others think like me? Nobody thinks like me. They only think about their own selves. Why can't they think about the bigger picture? Nobody thinks like that. That no, all or none. That is a typical ant. It's not just Asha, we all do this, but we need to understand, be aware that this is what is happening and not feel bad about it because this is the way. And then I don't think I can go on anymore. And everyone is always luckier or happier than me, right? Especially on the days we get stressed out, when we are overworked. Everybody else is happier than me. Everybody else is luckier than me. These are the things that we say to ourselves. And thinking with our feeling that we are so intuitive, we say, I have this intuitive feeling, we say, that when I go to this meeting, they're not going to say yes for whatever I'm going to ask. We think with our feeling. And because of this bias, most of our intuition is always towards negativity. And guilt thinking and labeling. And being a woman, I can say this safely. If it were to be a man saying this, I won't agree, but I would say, especially women, especially my generation and older, may not be younger generation, there is so much guilt beating, I should have done this earlier. I should have taken up the other job in the other school than coming to this school. If I had studied better, I could have done something else. Or we label, saying that, oh, this teacher is so lazy. Whatever I say, she will never ever agree. Or she says yes, but never gets anything done on time. We label people or we label ourselves. We will see how it affects both. If we are labeling ourselves, how it affects us. And if we are labeling others, and especially the students, how we respond to those students, how we respond to react to those students, how we, if it were to be our own colleagues, how we react and respond to those teachers. When we label them like that, it is very different. So another type is mind reading or fortune telling. This is again one of our favorites, I tell you, because we always think we know what others are thinking. We believe that we know what others are thinking. And especially youngsters, if they have a new haircut, nobody notices, nobody says anything about it. And then we think, oh, they probably don't like my hairstyle or my new outfit. We think we know what others are thinking. This is mind reading and fortune telling. Or you predict the worst outcome of a meeting. Even before we go to the meeting, we predict. I know the management is not going to approve of this extra money that I'm going to ask for, or this extra teacher that I need so badly, they will not approve. We already think, and again, what is going to happen? And most of the times it is in the negative way. I spent a little bit more time than what is necessary. Only reason is these things are so important. This is what, if we become aware of our own thinking, we have all done it, and trust me, we will keep doing it again and again. How not to do it, we will see. The next, and it is so important, we didn't even put a number for it, because this is the blaming and defending ant. And you see the picture there. It's not a red ant, it's a termite. In the nature, termites are the worst possible ant that you can think of. In a similar manner, our blaming thoughts, our defending ourselves, that is the worst possible negative thought, an ant. Because we look outside of us for a reason to explain our own failures. That is what is called blaming. Or we are not willing to take the onus on ourselves, and we are not willing to take the responsibility of the mistake we might have done. That is what is called defending. And I'm always okay, but you're always not okay. Again, blaming and defending. This is so important. The reason is whenever we start blaming either ourselves or others, or we defend ourselves, or sometimes we need to defend our teachers. I'm not talking from that perspective. But whenever we defend ourselves for our own mistakes, this we need to underline, take this, underline, and then etch it in our memory. The reason it is a termite, worst possible automatic negative thought, is because we will never, ever learn from that experience. It is so important for us to catch hold of it as it is happening, or even after it has happened, and stop it on the track. The most important, if you start noticing and identifying and acknowledging this blaming and defending negative thought, you would have half of that negativity within us, or even 80% of the negativity we would have overcome if we can take care of just this particular, and it is that crucial. So from now on, it becomes a little bit faster, except one slide, which is extreme, not just to become better leaders, because this is so important for the rest of our lives. I think with if it's okay with everybody, I will continue for another 10 or maximum 15 minutes, and then we will take the case later. Is that okay? Can you please raise your hands and give me an okay? Thank you, Sridevi, Bhavna, Vidya, everybody. Is it okay if I take 10 or 15 minutes more? Because this is so important for all our lives.
Of course.
And so, okay, thank you. Thanks, Raka. We give plenty of reasons. But this I will go quickly because we're all familiar with this. I don't have to explain. Then we say, if only my colleagues were not like this, that what we heard from the scenario, Asha's story, it's all everybody's story, right? If only my colleagues were not like that, or if the management was little bit more cooperative, or if my spouse was more understanding, I could have done much better. Or the same old thing, I'm so busy with this new job, with this new responsibility, I really don't have time to exercise. And because of my work pressure, I cannot spend more time on my children. I know they need it. I feel so bad. I feel guilty. But that keeps coming in the way. But because of that work pressure, that I cannot. And then we keep using, oh, I should not have done. Those should and should not have. That is the typical word when we use when we feel guilty. And we do all of this when we cannot find anything else than this. Then we come up with this answer, oh, I can't help it. This is the way I am. Because this is in my genes. Even when I was young, 30 years back, my mom used to say, you are so short-tempered, just like your grandfather. So I can't help it. It has come in my genes, is what we say to ourselves. But again, bringing science here, especially the epigenetic research, has proved we might be prone to certain of the things or predisposed, but we have learned from Ramesh that how through neuroplasticity we can change any of our traits, any of our qualities, any of our predispositions. It is possible to change. And so we cannot give even that reason, I can't help it, it is in my genes. finally we know these are not the reasons, but the excuses that we give. And we should be courageous enough to say, these are the excuses I'm giving myself. Then only will we be able to, because these ants are not just for some of us. As I said earlier, this is for every one of us. So again, when these ants go unchecked and unnoticed, we see it affects our work, it affects our relationships, it affects our health, and it affects our learning in general. It affects our entire life itself. So what should we do? We should be aware, beware of those ants, and not only beware, and be aware of the ants. That is the first tool, that as long as we are aware of our own ants, because more than we are aware, it is others who are aware of our ants, but we need to be aware of our own ants. This is the one of the most important tool. So anyway, the consequences of these ants is we cannot change as easily as we would like to change, and we shy away from our own responsibilities, so which ends up in procrastination. And we cannot be proactive, and we start reacting to things. We see this not being proactive with our own colleagues and teachers. This is one of the things. No matter what, some of the teachers have to be told again and again and again to be reminded of. That's one of the reasons, is because of lot of the negativity that might be within that person. And it's hard to learn new things, and we cannot be empathetic either to ourselves or to others, and especially to our loved ones. Just like how Asha carried her stress back home and took it out on her 10-year-old, we cannot be empathetic. At that time, we lose our cool. That's again because of our negativity. Not just, we keep giving that as an excuse, stress as an excuse. Even that stress, it's not just the stress, but that negativity behind that stress is what causes us not to be empathetic with our own spouses and with our own children once we go home. And we're not as happy we would like to be. We thought, once I got this promotion and then became the school leader, I would be so happy. We would have built castles in the air beforehand. But once we're in the midst of it, we see we are so engulfed with lot of challenges and problems. We cannot even enjoy the promotion that we got. We cannot even enjoy the the role of a school leader, the role of a principal that we dreamed so much. Why? Because of this. And because of all of this, we don't realize this negativity bias. It burdens us with jealousy, with anger, and sometimes revenge. We may not take it out, but at least at the thought level, this revenge happens many a times at the thought level. All of this we will be able to notice only when we are truly truthful to ourselves. If no, otherwise it is not possible. And whenever we are truthful to ourselves, I can assure you, it hurts us to say we are jealous. We say, I had such revengeful thoughts about this person. But trust me, as I said, if we can understand one mind, we can understand everybody's mind. And these are all normal ways of coping with other things. All of this happens at the thought level. We may not be able to put it into action, but all of this happens at the thought level. Even then, it affects us because these are the negative thoughts. Every thought releases a chemical, and those chemicals that are released, they get distributed throughout the body. They just don't remain in the brain. but through the nerve endings and through the blood vessels, they get distributed throughout the body. And those negative chemicals in the long run affect our health. And we don't have to feel bad admitting to ourselves such ants do come once in a while or many a times. At times, it's okay to admit. Only when we admit will we be able to overcome. And finally, we feel frustrated because we really don't know how to overcome. Because we take it very personally. Because as kids, we were taught, oh, you should not feel just jealous. These should not statements from our elders, from our parents, or from any of the gurus should not statements. You should not feel jealous. You should not get angry with elders. You should never ever have revengeful thoughts. All of these are so hardwired into us. We keep all of that in our non-conscious mind, feeling bad, feeling even, what's the word I'm looking for? Feeling so bad that we are even getting such negative thoughts. Pardon?
I said probably feeling helpless, ma'am.
Helpless comes later. Much more than helpless, we feel ashamed. Ashamed is the right word, because we have been taught as kids, you should never feel jealous, because we are taught in a moralistic way. Here I'm saying it is not about moralistic way. It is scientific. Everybody, even saints, get such thoughts. Their jealous thoughts is not similar to ours, but it is labeled as jealous. From a neuroscience perspective, from the perspective of the mind, from the perspective of how the brain works, irrespective of whether somebody is a saint or a scientist, professor or a student, doctor or a patient, everybody will get such negative thoughts, jealous, anger, revengeful thoughts. We need to admit for ourselves, then only will we be able to overcome this. And we should not feel bad, because this is the norm. This is why only by understanding how can we get rid of this? Only by understanding, labeling, understanding these thoughts will not go away. We need to understand, acknowledge, and to overcome, because there is no colored pill that comes in a bottle that we can take to get rid of jealousy. No injection that we can get to come out of that revengeful thoughts or feelings. Only by being aware, by understanding, acknowledging, and how to overcome. I'll get to that in a minute. So how do these ants impact our life? This is the most important slide for our life. Any tool that we are going to give from now on, any neuroscientific tool, any rewiring tool of the brain that we are going to give, everything is based on this slide. So I'm going to stop. After I talk about this concept, I'm going to stop. And only if you have understood, and not just understood, accepted, because this is not my opinion or view. This is based on science. Only when we can understand and accept, then all our jobs will become truly, truly, truly easy from now on. So please do pay extra attention, just like you would tell your students. They are like kids, and I'm going to be requesting you all, as you're all my kids, from that feeling, I'm going to request you all to pay more attention, because this is the whole crux of understanding and implementing any challenge or problem that we get in our life. This has to be all our mantra, our scientific mantra. I said it with an accent. Mantra, scientific mantra. Okay, what is this? When we have too many of these ANTS, automatic negative thoughts, and when they go unchecked and unnoticed, our whole life is like a pendulum. Here we have given you fast forward button and backward button, fast backward button. Yes, that's it. Or in other words, you can imagine our whole life goes back and forth like a pendulum. How? Going back and forth between our past and our future. Just like a pendulum. Whenever it goes to the past, it is filled with regret. I should have done this. I should not have done that. All the should and should not statements come. That is looking at our life with regret. And we look at all the lost opportunities we had in our lives earlier. And we look at life in the future filled with anxiety. I'm not sure how I'm going to cope with this group of colleagues, or some of the difficult people in the management, and especially in this day and age with what is happening. I'm not sure how I can come up with the standards that we have set for ourselves, or the management has set for ourselves with respect to 10th grade results. I really don't know. So our future, this is our self-talk that happens about the future, which is filled with anxiety and pessimism. And if at all, if we are in the present moment, our present moment is filled with inadequacy, and we are not satisfied. So we go back and forth between past and future with regret and anxiety, and we are not satisfied with the present moment. This is the most important aspect. Come to think of it, that past and future are our mental constructs. Truly, there is nothing like past. There is nothing like future. Don't take me wrong. I'm not talking about the past is there. Yesterday was there, right? I'm not talking from that perspective. We need to learn from the past. Yes, we need to think about the past to learn from it. I'm not talking from the perspective of not planning for the future. Yes, we need to plan for the future, not from that perspective. Whether learning or planning, all of that are still mental constructs, come to think of it. I am talking from the perspective of doing, from the perspective of action, not from the perspective of thinking, not from the perspective of feeling, but from the perspective of willing to do it, from the perspective of action. Whenever we are acting upon something, there is nothing like past, there is nothing like future, not even the previous moment. Anything that we do, we can only do it in the present moment, here and now, now and here. This is the most important neuroscience concept. I'm just going to give you 10 seconds to see if you have any questions with this. The rest of our lives, I'm not concerned about the didactic, rest of our lives, to overcome any challenge, any problem in our life, we can overcome if we have understood this slide, this concept, not just the slide, about anything that we do can only happen in the present moment, here and now, now and here. And the past and future are our mental constructs. Please raise your hand or to unmute yourself, and only if there is a doubt, because I would like to finish, just build little. Now is the time to ask. I'll wait. Or else